This draw now is a bit more juicy than the previous one. Kamsky versus Topalov. So Kamsky having won the US Championship, maybe that's a good confidence boost. Hopefully he's not too tired. He was playing white here and he kicked off with e4 against Veselin Topalov. So Sicilian defence. You see they do try and create imbalances, the Grandmasters, not just play e5 with something dull. So knight f3 and then after d6 d4. So we have the open Sicilian, and after a6 we get a positional move now, unfortunately, a4. So this is a positional continuation where white's unlikely to play like caveman with like bishop e3, you know, and this sort of stuff, because the a4 pawn means the queen side's weaker now. Basically, white's going to try and restrain black's pawns on the queen side and activity in general, making sure black hasn't got too much counterplay. The interesting thing here may be to quickly examine is a5 was played immediately, and I don't usually see that. Why is a5 played immediately? You might be asking. Well, I am. Maybe that's because I'm not awake. Why couldn't black play knight takes a5? Knight takes a5. Now Houdini is giving this position as advantage to white because knight d5. This is a new one. This is a kind of weird trap. So if takes the knight's stranded. Let's just make sure of that. The knight's kind of stranded here, so it can't go back to c6, and then b4 would be a big threat. And if black does knight c6, then knight takes apparently is quite good. Takes knight takes f6, e takes. And now bishop d3, and white has sacrificed a pawn and seems to be slightly better. This is something which I might try in my own games, because in this kind of position, what is going on here for the sacrificed pawn, you might ask? Apparently white has the edge, just taking you quite far from the game, just to demonstrate that white might have an edge. So bishop c4 and queen g4 apparently. So white's got a freer hand on the king side. These double pawns and this blocked in bishop maybe give white compensation. So anyway, let's go back. Okay, so a5, e6 was played, sidestepping that, and now white took on c6, which normally you don't really want to do because it's increasing black's pawns in the center. But in this case with a6 the bishop's kind of hemmed in anyway, and I think white's interested in like bishop d3 and f4 here, and it looks so because of bishop d and f4, d5 could be answered by e5, so I think that's the general idea. But d5 is not played. Black doesn't want to invite e5. That would be a very dangerous pawn, chasing away the knight, giving white a much freer hand on the king side. But instead, actually, c5 was played, and c5 aims to sort of put the bishop on a nice square, put more pressure on e4. And now Kamsky actually plays bishop f4, developing a piece rather than using another pawn move. After queen c7 there might be a threat of c4, so that's parried. Queen e2, keeping an eye on black playing c4. Also the queen's good of course for e5s potentially, which will be good to try and attack the black queen. And in fact, after bishop b7, e5. See, I told you this was a much more exciting game than the other one. I mean, this looks pretty dangerous for black, doesn't it? In fact, Topalov, he just threatened mate in 1, The excitement doesn't end here. Look, you see, mate in one is threatened. World Championship candidates. So that's parried with a seemingly actually poxy looking move. But I guess it does the job, and that's the important thing. Because how else does White defend against this mate threat? So he plays actually f3, and now we see a kind of dynamic looking knight move, knight h5, knight on the rim, breaking the rules, but it's justified here, and we're going to see why. So after bishop d2, okay, we see the move c4, and Topalov has ingeniously set up this knight to be able to go to f4, because he's going to take on e5 now. Bishop takes c4, d takes e5. So queen e5 doesn't look too possible because of the bishop, but then the knight, you might ask. So let's have a quick look at that as well. Queen takes e5, queen takes, check. Bishop c5. So black would stand a tiny bit better here actually. The bishops are kind of nice, but it's not much in it, so that was also kind of maybe playable. But in the game, after c4, okay, takes. White actually has the advantage here, doesn't want to sort of do that. Queen takes c5. He plays actually b3. So he doesn't mind about knight f4. Rook d8 first anyway, and a check, and now knight f4. Okay, technically, believe it or not, White's slightly better, and Kamsky comes up with a very technical move here. Instead of like moving his queen, he attacks Topalov's queen. Now taking this guy off, black is okay, but White's still slightly better according to Houdini anyway, if we trust Houdini, by about 0.29 actually. So either way, doesn't even need to do anything flash maybe. Bishop, knight a4, knight takes e2, so the queens come off, and you might want to fall asleep now, the queens are off. Oh, draw. No, actually there was something exciting that happened here. Bishop takes e2, and after king e7. Now, I was talking last night on the Chess Cube King's Crushers Cafe, which you're welcome to come and visit. We had a bit of a discussion about positional sacrifices, and I was saying they kind of emphasise things, and I might be doing a video annotation of an excellent series of articles on the Streatham Brixton blog about positional sacrifices. But here we get to see one. After b4, black emphasises now the weakness of these pawns with a positional sacrifice. He sacrifices the exchange, and it's only the first kind of day of the candidates, so good on Topalov. You know, you've created you know, an exciting game with this positional sacrifice. Technically White's better according to Houdini, but the play is in black's court here. If he can munch up some pawns as compensation, get good central pieces. So he munches up a couple of pawns there. 2 pawns for the exchange is good, but the problem is this is a bit vulnerable. These guys are a bit vulnerable to rook a3. So he's losing 1 pawn, so it's 1 pawn for the exchange. But the rook is also good. So all 3 of black's pieces are good here. And the king's kind of got a safe haven there on f6. So this is kind of nice. Black's almost equalising according to Houdini. It's coming down to 0, the evaluation actually. Coming down to 0, 0.05, teetering, nearly 0, 0.01 here. So, good stuff. You see, creative positional sacrifices can pay off. He had a temporary, emphasis of White's weak pawns, mopped them all up on the queen side. The 2 bishops complement each other, attacking both colours. But here we have a kind of repetition invited and taken. So no severe draws or anything, they just agreed to draw. But it was 41 moves, and there was something exciting in it. So let's quickly check that again. That game, an overview and summary. So the interesting thing here, I don't know how many of you guys would consider this move A5. Bit cheeky, isn't it? It's this kind of positional gambit that if it's taking, you just play knight D5. So the idea, you're kind of doubling black's pawns, because if E6, again, you can just take on F6, forcing the doubling of pawns, because if queen takes, you've got rook takes A5. So I think it's a trick worth bearing in mind, actually, if you want to sort of sack a pawn in order to sort of double pawns. That's kind of interesting. Knight D5. Okay. So in the game, we have black using this diagonal to create a weakness, and then F4 was also seized on by Topalov. So there was kind of aggressive play from Veselin Topalov. Aggressive and potentially entertaining. So knight F4, but now, and then we get this positional exchange sacrifice. And one of the things actually I was going on about last night in the Cube Cafe, I was saying, you know, logically, the weird thing about chess, you can build up your position, and the logical thing does become then to use your emphasis options to further increase your advantage. It becomes a natural thing to do a positional sacrifice. But here, black wasn't particularly better after b4, but it does solve a lot of issues with these pawns, because otherwise these pawns would have been kind of dangerous anyway on the queen side. So it knocks out a few issues here, even if it doesn't, you know, give black a lasting advantage, even if it's just about equal. He isn't faced with a marching queen side from white, so he safely equalises with black in a different style to Kramnik's draw. So yeah, good stuff. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.